And now we'll recognize the vice chairman of the full committee. You're uniquely qualified to ask these questions, being from Boise State.
Thank you very much,
That's
Mr.
pretty
Chairman.
amazing. You're
I
recognized
appreciate the
for
time
5
Mr.
minutes.
Whitman
Thank
has
you.
on.
Yeah.
I appreciate the time Mr. Whitman has on. It's Boise State Bronco colors. We're glad to see that. But also Florida colors, if I got that right. So, and probably Illinois in there somewhere, I'm guessing. Yeah, okay. Question for Mr. Egbo. As mentioned, I'm a Boise State University alum. They're in my district, as well as University of Idaho, Idaho State University. But they in the football and basketball arena have been very competitive, but they are not of the same size and scope of the large schools. And so I'd like to get your take on this. Under the House case, the revenue sharing cap is up to $20.5 million. Well, that's more than the entire budget for Boise State or University of Idaho or Idaho State, or I am assuming Abilene Christian University. And so just in terms of scope, how's this going to work? Can this be fairly applied? Can the smaller schools maintain their competitiveness with the larger schools under this revenue share cap system?
If I could get this answer right, I'll probably get a raise from my AD. So, but I think the first thing is having clear rules. I think the first step is leveling the playing field as far as what is permissible, what is not, what is the standard. Everybody being on the same page, so that schools like the schools you mentioned in our school can sit down and say, okay, this is the standard across the board, and this is what we can kind of build and strategize for how we can compete in this new age. But I think with the gray areas that are implemented right now, it's very hard to start that strategic process.
Thank you, Mr. Egbo. And Mr. Beamer, I'd like to go to you. If you have a comment on that, I would ask for your comment on that same question, but I'd also like to follow up. I'm going to give you a two-part here and let you run. Realizing that the objective of NIL is to recognize and reward some of the student athletes for their contributions. Do you see unintended consequences? And if so, what bothers you the most about possible unintended consequences of what we're trying to do?
Thank you for the question. I think NIL, as it was initially implemented in 2021, the way it was meant to be, I think is very good. I think in a lot of ways what name, image, and likeness has turned into in so many situations is pay for play. And that's very much because of the fact that it's not as regulated in my mind as it should be. There's an issue of agents in the NIL world that's another issue in regards to how it's regulated and is everything on the up and up. That's an unintended consequence that I think has come certainly from NIL, without a doubt.
Thank you for that. I'd like to go to Mr. Whitman. I've just got about a little over a minute left, but I'd like to talk with you and get your feedback on federal preemptive standards. I've heard from the Idaho schools that the concerns over enforcement burdens when it comes to the patchwork of some of the state and DC NIL laws and the need for federal preemption. Without a federal preemptive standards, I could see a situation arising where state law conflicts with the terms of the settlement, which is still pending approval. But how would an institution have to adjust its strategy if this was the case?
Thank you for the question. I think you're thinking about it exactly right. There is that possibility where states will pass legislation that conflicts with the terms of the settlement in an effort to create competitive advantage. And again, that's what we've started to see with more frequency across the country is a race for states to find ways to give their hometown schools an edge. We've seen that in states like Missouri and Arkansas, where they now allow NIL payments to high school athletes who have signed letters of intent to compete at in-state institutions. We've seen it at states where they have offered state tax breaks for student-athlete NIL income. We've seen it in certain states where they've provided caps on how much money agents can make from student athletes, which then disincentivizes the best agents from working in those states. And ultimately, what we are here to discuss is the role that Congress can play in trying to create that level playing field and avoid putting schools in situations where they have to choose between complying with a federal court order and ultimately with a state law. And we understand that in this environment, that conflict can arise, and ultimately, only one body has the power and the authority to solve that for us, and that's Congress.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some follow-up questions. I'll do that in writing. Thank you for the time. I
Thank you
yield
so
back.
much. Appreciate it. Very good.